Dave, thank you so much for being with us today. We're very excited to hear your story and your experience with the unions. Can you tell us a little bit about your history as an educator and where you've gotten to be where you are today?
Yeah, 3 years ago I left public school service after 20 years at Newburgh High School, and I worked as an educational assistant with tons of kids in trying to bring up their grade. We had a STAR program back then, so it was before alt school stuff. And then that transitioned into security, which transitioned into getting the opportunity to counsel kids a ton. And that was my favorite thing, helping out students, staff, parents. And then I've coached 53 different seasons of sports at the school level, and football, basketball, tennis, and then you run for a school board, and then here you are.
So Dave, you were voted into the school board, you became the chair of the school board, and then the local union filed a lawsuit against the school board that you were chair of. And tell us more about that and the lead up to that.
Well, I think, just being elected to the chair of the board wasn't the reason. We voted to take the pride flags and the Black Lives Matter flags out of our school. They never should have been put in our schools. They were allowed by our previous administration. And politics hasn't been in our schools for forever. It's supposed to be the American flag and the Oregon State flag, and that's pretty similar across the United States. And it was really that simple. I mean, it was that simple, just no, And it turned into, we're mad that you're telling us what to do, And it was prefaced by saying not all the union members agree with this. But when you're in the union, or if you're in a school and you don't play along with everything, then you risk losing a lot. Your job, your position there, friends. This has been so divisive the last 2 years. But if you go back 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago, we were told our country would be divided, and we were. And the people that said that have done a great job of dividing our country. It started in the big cities, but it ended up in a small town like Newburgh. The lawsuits against the school board, which is the school district, which is their employer. So it's kind of, really, we have insurance to cover us against lawsuits, but then all of a sudden you go past your insurance money. Where's that money going to come from? Taxpayers' dollars. And there's a lot of pressure for people that run our union now to follow their so-called party line, and they get caught up in that.
So Dave, you said something very interesting there. You mentioned that the beliefs of the union members, the dues-paying members, didn't always line up with what the teachers union and the other local unions were doing in coming after the school board and suing the school board. And that's something we at the Freedom Foundation see every day. We hear from rank and file teachers and classified employees that they are very much not agreeing with what these teachers unions and other unions are doing. And you shared with me that these union member dues were what the union used to file the lawsuit and actually go after you personally with a recall election. Can you tell us more about that?
I think when you're a head of a union and you're representing a union, you have to represent everybody. And you can't just pick and choose who you're going to represent. You should be representing every one of your union members because they are paying dues. They all deserve to be represented well. And I think in public education right now, the reason we're going to struggle and are struggling is because you have a lot of people that are in education who would agree that there shouldn't be any politics in the schools. It shouldn't be there. But I'm telling you, as a public school employee, you cannot speak up and feel safe. And so when people say, feel safe goes both ways. It's not just one way on this. And I think that that's a really difficult one because there's a lot of people who really don't feel safe at work when they speak up, and they just don't say anything.
And so when you say some people don't feel safe in school or at work, are you saying they don't feel safe because of the way the union's treating them?
Well, I think it's the people with, the leadership of that, there's a lot of peer pressure. If you go back to middle school or high school, it was even there when I was there, and I'm a lot older than you, there was peer pressure, big time. I've talked to teachers that I know, because I've lived here for my whole life and worked in the public schools. I've had them at my table crying because of the pressure they feel. They don't want to go to work that day. They can't wait to get out the door and go home and feel safe.
And I'm sure you would agree that most people get into education because they want to help students, they want to teach children, and they want to make a difference in their community, not to be involved in politics and be funding all of these different agendas. And that's exactly what these unions are doing.
Absolutely.
So you survived the recall election.
Yep.
And tell me about your relationship and the school board's relationship with the union now.
I think that right now our relationship is strained for sure with the people who are trying to lead the union. I really feel like we could have avoided a lot of this with just a sit-down conversation. Are the unions powerful? Yes. Do I feel like they're trying to get their agenda across? Yes. And it's hurting public education because too many people out there don't want their kids part of this, and they're going to pull their kids. And we're going to get to the point in public schools where we're losing too many kids. With sex ed and all these things coming down the pipe, there's too many parents that aren't going to put up with it.
I'm so glad you shared that about your campaign really being a grassroots movement and a community standing up, because that helps inspire other teachers and other community members all across the country who are also realizing that the unions are very much fighting against them in many ways and really behind a lot of these political agendas. And many teachers that we talk to feel the same way you do, but are very scared, just as you said, that they're going to be the victim of attacks from the union. And so can you share with us a little bit about how you got the courage to run and really stand up for all of this?
Well, I mean, Jesus, my wife Judy, great friends, and I'm stubborn. I really believe that the United States, our Constitution, the First Amendment, everything about it's amazing. We don't need to fix it. We don't need to rip it up. We don't need to start over. I'm a history buff, so all you have to do is look at anywhere socialism or communism have been, and they've left a wake of destruction. We may have been the tip of the spear in Newburgh, but I'll tell you what, this is going everywhere.
And what advice would you have for any teachers or anyone working in education that is afraid of the teachers union or afraid of leaving the union, speaking out against the union, or standing up against what the union's saying?
I think at the end of the day, and I really believe this, I don't think since World War II that we as citizens have been faced with a war this big, attacking our country. I saw a side of Newburgh that I wish I never would have seen. But at the same time, I also have moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and kids come up to me and say, thank you for fighting. I'm walking down the street, people will stop their car and get out of their car and come over and give you a hug and say, thank you for fighting. As far as the unions go, some of these people are people I dearly love to work with. And I'm hoping we can come together and talk about that. But for the specific part of your question is fear is a tough thing to overcome. And when it's your job, it's one thing to tell people how to feel, it's another way when you feel that way. And so when you're working in a school, it's real easy to tell somebody just to, be tough. It's another thing to actually have to live it day to day. And I guess I would flip it on to all the teachers and say, treat everybody well. Let them be their individual way, and don't ostracize them, don't hammer them for not believing the way you believe. That's just not the American way. I think people, though, right now are going to have to sit back and look in the mirror. I've told every kid I've ever coached, look in the mirror at the end of the day. When you brush your teeth before you go to bed, you can't lie to yourself very easily. And so when everybody goes to bed tonight, look in the mirror when you brush your teeth and say, am I fighting for this country?
Well, Dave, I know there are so many people that are so grateful for what you're doing, not just in the Newburgh community, but I know your story inspires teachers and educators all across the nation and helps them be brave too. So I just really thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.